this is one of the first of a series of three, the first of a series of three network meetings that are being organised on an age and stage approach. And so today we're looking at early years and primary school age children. And the idea for today is that we focus on how the Preparing for Adulthood agenda applies to those age groups and how we can start to think about embedding that in the work that we do with children and their families. We're going to be hearing about practice that aims to promote an ordinary life, because I think it's hard to talk about preparing for adulthood when children are in their early years or in primary school, certainly in the early years of primary school. But we really aiming for children and as adults to become full citizens, to have choices, to be able to do the kinds of things that most of us take for granted. And we need to be thinking about how we can support that journey from the very earliest days. And the Code of Practice does, of course, support that. And so Chapter 8 is called Preparing for Adulthood from the Earliest Years. And that's why we're focusing on that today. You're going to be hearing about from a couple of local authorities where they're trying to embed Preparing for Adulthood in their processes and systems, particularly around the planning and review processes within the SEND world. So I'm very grateful to them for that. We're going to be hearing from a nursery head teacher and also from a primary school where they're doing work on this agenda. So that's fantastic. And later in the afternoon, you're going to be able to join groups and you will be going into breakout rooms, and we're going to be thinking then about raising aspirations of children from early years. Obviously, the session is being recorded. So if you don't want to be seen, do turn your camera. You're going to have your camera off anyway, generally speaking. So hopefully that'll be okay. We will be sharing all of the materials from today after the meeting. So you won't need to kind of ask us for them. That will happen automatically because you're on our registration list. Okay. And we have got a very full agenda today. So Sarah will be managing the times for us. So she'll be telling you if you are, if as a speaker you're running over your slot, because it is quite tight on timing. So if it, I hope that's okay with everybody. We will have a comfort break halfway through the afternoon. Hopefully it will happen as planned in the right time. We will be letting you have everything, as I say, and you will have an opportunity to add comments and to ask questions of our speakers. So use the chat to ask us questions. We will try and respond appropriately as you do that. So we'll all be keeping an eye on the chat for you. And I think that's probably all I need to say in terms of housekeeping. We will be using an evaluation form at the end, and Rebecca will post that in the chat when we get to that point. So when Pat Bullen joins us, at some point I will introduce her as well, because it's Pat's doing that. Actually, this has been such a joint effort. So thank you. That's it from me. And I'm now delighted to introduce our first speaker, who is Camilla Endine. And Camilla is a health visitor based in Dudley in the Black Country, and she's going to be talking about the role of health in supporting early years and enabling inclusion and a good life. So over to you, Camilla. Okay, thanks very much.
Oh, Camilla, you're on mute. Do you want the video first, Carol? Or?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, yes. Do forgive me, Camilla.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a little video to show you, which is only about 4 minutes long. So let's see that first and then come over to you, Camilla, if that's all right.
Thank you.
Only 6% of adults with a learning disability are in paid employment. We want to change that. It's never too early to inspire.
I'm 6. I'm 6.
I think it's really important to speak to the boys about work. They might only be little, but I want them to grow up knowing that they can have a place, they can have a job, they can participate in society, that they presume that that's what's going to happen, just like it will with their friends without disabilities.
Mummy, what's that?
That is a superhero. That'd be a cool job.
What's that, Mummy?
That's a hairdresser. Should we go and see a hairdresser?
Yeah.
Yeah. Off we go.
Yes.
Put my head back. Are you excited to try out some other jobs? Yay! Working with people with disabilities before being a parent, was very aware that once school and college finished, that not many people actually went on into employment and didn't really have a reason to get up out of bed in the morning and felt that self-worth.
There you go. And what's this one?
I think having a job when Ollie and Cameron are adults would allow them to really live in a way that's analogous to their mainstream peers, like to be able to go out and buy their own food and to save up for a treat that they want without having to depend on mum and dad all the time, or to be able to just, as we all want to do, to be able to, if we want something, to be able to get it, and to be able to do that, you need to get a job that pays your wages. So sometimes the prospect of hiring somebody with a disability can be daunting. They feel like it's not achievable. They don't know. They expect that there are massive barriers that need to be conquered, when actually, in reality, that's not the case. We're going to watch some videos of things that you could do when you're older for jobs.
No, what jobs?
What jobs? That's
I have a job.
My 22. My work, that's perfect.
I love the staff. Yeah, because they're very friendly and talkative. The best thing is going to be preparing, plating up and stuff.
The company is called Department of Environment, Food and Royal Affairs.
Good morning. Here to see Mark Williams.
Okay, would you like to sign in, please? And here's your badge, your ID badge.
Lovely, thank you very much.
Although it might seem a long time until your child may need to think about work, supporting WorkFit is really important because it's paving the way for our children's future. Talk to your boss about WorkFit. It won't cost them anything, and they may get a new member of staff.
Marvellous. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for that. Anybody got any thoughts on that particular video? Seems to me that it's a very, I love it, says Pat. Yeah, welcome, Pat. Yeah. It's fantastically aspirational, isn't it? Wonderfully, not fantastically. That makes it sound like it's unrealistic, but it's just, yeah, inspiring.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
really
and I think, you know, yeah, and the parent is just presuming, you know, PFA as that preparation for their future, and it's by experiences as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing about it seems to me that it's yeah, Wouldn't it be a wonderful world if that was the norm? Yeah, absolutely. Opportunities for all. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
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 And I think the lovely thing was the practical
Brilliant.
nature of that as well. It felt very like a rare recognition that children don't automatically know what's out there and what's possible. All those different jobs that they were trying. It's fantastic, wasn't it? Promoting choice, reminds me of the importance of family leadership. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Some of the most exciting things happen because families see the possibilities, don't they? So
Yeah, and provide the experiences as well. The comments that are coming up in the chat.
Sarah, no door is closed. Yeah.
Yeah, no door closed, and that's so true. Okay.
Yeah.
So keep all those comments coming in, because it's really
Yeah. Just wondering if there's similar
your views on that.
Fit. Yeah, WorkFit isn't just in Scotland, so check it out in your area to see if there's anything happening with the Down Syndrome Association. I say Pat's saying Shropshire IT looks a bit iffy, Sarah.
I'll switch my video off because that might help.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
That's okay, no problem. Okay, so now we will go to Camilla, and I'm so sorry for the false start there, Camilla. Yes, I'll introduce you again. Camilla is a health visitor based in Dudley, and she's going to be talking to us about the role of health in supporting early years and enabling inclusion and a good life. So over to you, Camilla. Thank you.
Hi everybody, yes, so my name's Camilla. I'm a health visitor. I'm based in Halesowen in Dudley. I've been there about 8 years. I started off in general nursing, came over from Ireland to do my training and ended up staying, as you do. And I actually got drawn towards health visiting when I had my own children, because my family were all in Ireland and I was quite isolated, so my health visitor really was a great support to me. I really love my job. I love supporting families, and I'm hoping I'll be in this job until I retire, please God. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. So really, first of all, I wanted to talk about who are health visitors. Rebecca, would you mind putting it on to the next slide, if that's okay? Can you? Thank you. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Sorry for that. A bit of a technophobe, but anyway, we've got there. So who are health visitors? Because sometimes we arrive on people's doorsteps and they think we're there just to weigh their baby, or sometimes they think we're there to inspect their house, but that's not really why we're there. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what we do. So we're nurses to begin with, and then we do a degree to become public health workers. So our focus is really on health promotion and health education, and we don't really focus on health, on disease and illness. Okay, so a big part of our job is attachment and bonding. So when we go in initially at the antenatal contact, we'll talk to parents. Are they talking to their baby? Are they speaking to their baby? Do they know what they want their baby to do when they're born, what they look like? So they're building a relationship with their baby before their baby ever comes out of the womb. So that's a good start with attachment. So then we look at promoting breastfeeding. So we support with the practicality of breastfeeding if that's what mum wants to do. Then a big thing is about positive mental health. So we're in a very strange climate at the moment, aren't we? And there's a lot of anxiety and depression. So we sort of pick up on that, and that will impact on children and on parents parenting. So we signpost to Dudley talking therapies and support services in the community. So then we look at healthy relationships. So we look at, is there domestic abuse in the home? Do parents need support? Because we make them aware, and they probably know already, that it will impact on their children and have negative outcomes. So we refer to the appropriate services. So then we look at promotion of the childhood vaccination programme. We look at reducing obesity and healthy diet. We look at dental health. A big one is school readiness. So really that's the core centre of our job, school readiness. So we're looking at, when we do our 2-year review, our development check, how are children's speech? Are they vocal? Would they be able to settle in a nursery provision? Are they able to follow instruction? Are they toilet trained? Can they dress themselves? So all that kind of things. And then we look at home safety and accident prevention. That's a lot of what we do in our role. So next slide, please. So our universal services, this is what every child in the country gets, what you will receive when you have your baby. So you'll get an antenatal contact, that's where we go in initially. You'll get a new birth contact between 10 and 15 days. Every child gets a 9 to 12 month check, and every child gets a 24-month review. Next slide, please. Okay, so Universal Plus services. So this is what we offer to families as well as the Universal. So this is when families need additional support. So with children with delays, we may be the first agency that pick up on these children. So somebody may ring me and say, look, Camilla, I'm worried about my child. I'm worried about their speech. I'm worried about how they're interacting with other children. I'm worried how they'll cope when they go to nursery. So we would arrange a home visit to go out and see them. So our role isn't really about getting a label for children or a diagnosis. It's about getting the additional support in place. So we would be the first agency that would actually see the child and maybe raise concerns with the GP or refer to all the other support agencies. So as you're probably well aware, all the community agencies that we could support are early years, a massive one. We work with early years who would go in and assess children in home or in nursery to see how they're doing. Speech and language, paediatrician, audiology, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, and there is quite a long wait for all these lovely agencies who work very hard, but there is a long wait, so the earlier we get in, the better. Sometimes I find with some GPs, sometimes they believe, oh, if you wait a little bit longer and then we can assess again, but from our point of view, the earlier you get in, the earlier you get the support in place, the better for the child and the better outcome. So at the end of the day, what we want is all agencies working together to support the child in meeting their health and development potential. And our outcome would be for the child to be placed in an educational environment where they will thrive and be happy. And really the decision is the voice of the child needs to be the basis of all that decision making. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so if your child is a diagnosis, and we do work with a lot of children who've got complex health needs or a diagnosis. So when you initially get that diagnosis, parents may feel like their floor has gone through it, it's fallen through. They might feel really devastated. And they may be told by maybe the medics that their child may not walk or talk to a certain age. So our role would be to go in to offer moral support to the family, and we encourage them to focus on hopes and dreams and aspirations for the child. And we encourage them to focus on what the child can do rather than what they can't do. So we encourage parents to recognise that their child is unique and that their diagnosis does not define them. And we encourage families to find ways and opportunities to enable their child. So we might look at looking at Makaton signs so the child can build up their communication skills that way. We might look at a specialist nursery provision. We might look at working with nursery to see, does that child prefer to learn outdoors? Do they need a smaller amount of time in the session? What's going to help them to cope, to enjoy the sessions in nursery? And then when we get all these children with these complex health needs or diagnosis, we'll refer and signpost onto the Dudley STEM team. So they'll give us, all the parents, all the up-to-date information on the support that's available nationally and locally. So i.e. the National Autistic Society or the British Deaf Association. And we also signpost families to the Families Information Centre in Dudley, and that's for peer support groups to find out what's on locally in their area. So we have a support group in Dudley, it's called Ups and Downs, and it's for children with trisomy 21. So it's where the families all meet together and support each other, which is a very good outlet. Next slide, please. Okay. So another aspect of what we do is we lead early help. So that's where all the agencies get round together around the table. We listen to the family and we come up with a plan that's actually got to help to tailor to the needs of the family. So it's around the family and around the child, and it's what they need, because sometimes if you're working in isolation with a family, you're not sharing information with the agencies, whereas when you all get together, we're all sitting around the table with the family and we've got the best outcome. Okay, and then we offer practical support and advice to families on entitlements for disability living allowance or the Blue Badge scheme. We encourage families to engage with all the support being offered, because sometimes you might feel overwhelmed and you might think, I can't cope with all these agencies, I can't cope with all these people in my life. But it's just about getting the right support for your child, getting them into the right school where they'll be happy and supported. And then we work with the families until they're 5. So we build up a strong therapeutic group with parents. So we'll be their go-to. So if they feel like they're struggling and they're not able to talk to a certain agency, we'll work with them on that behalf. And then at the end of my presentation, really our outlook as health visitors is that all children, regardless of health needs or disabilities, should be enabled to have the same opportunities in life as every other child. So that's it. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, Camilla. Thank you. So I'm going to open this up now quickly for questions, and yeah, I'd be really interested to hear what people think. I thought it was a really positive presentation, and you know, gave us an insight into how much more supportive we could be with this earlier age group, and kind of talking to people about their futures at that age is, you know, especially as the health visitors are available to everybody. So yeah, Pat. Hello,
Thanks.
Pat.
Hi, Carol.
I mentioned you earlier, Pat. I did say that that I would introduce you, so perhaps you could introduce yourself just before you ask your question.
Okay, I will do. I'm really sorry I was late. I was in a really heated conversation about inclusion with some parents and a governing body, which kind of set me up nicely for this, I guess, in some ways. So I'm Pat Bullen. I'm the coordinator for the SEND an inclusion network in the West Midlands. I'm a bit of a transfer here, came from the East Mids, but I cover both regions and the East of England. Now, not a full-time job, but my role is to support the networks and to make connections with other parts of the system across the West Mids that can support what we do. So thanks for giving me the intro slot, and sorry I was late. But Camilla, thank you so much, because one of the things that has been exercising me really is when we can see a system ahead of us that is becoming a bit less inclusive, and that's not an observation about anyone on this call. I would imagine if we've pitched up for this session, we're all switched on to that kind of inclusive opportunity that we want for children and young people. But when I've looked at some local areas across the East and West Mids, there's a larger number of children identified in the early years that we say should, you know, the recommendation from professionals are go to special. And I think that's partly the trepidation of what's available in the system in a way, because the curriculum has become more standardized and narrow. I think teachers are frustrated themselves about what the curriculum is, to say that as a former teacher. So I suppose with that in mind, what are the conversations like? Because we want those dreams and aspirations, and it is just for an ordinary life. It's not to say, Pat, you're going to be a brain surgeon, even though you've got some additional needs that include cognition and learning. But it's being realistic, but also getting that right sort of aspiration for a brilliantly ordinary life. I wonder what your conversations are like.
Yeah, so I think we work massively with early years, and early years are an amazing service. So we've got a specialist teacher in Dudley called Claire Rose. I'll give her a shout out. She's really lovely. So she'll work with the child in nursery, and she'll work with the family, and she'll see like preschool before they actually go into nursery provision. When they start nursery, are they happy in that provision? Does it suit them? Every child is different. Every child is unique. Some children would settle really well in a mainstream provision with support. Some children won't, and it's unique in the child, and it's making sure that we've got that special plan in place for the child. So we've got that educational care plan in place, and that we've all explored and we've all fed into it, from the nursery staff to the health visitor to early years to the paediatrician. So, and that parents give their input as well. So we're not, I would say the focus nowadays isn't more so, like maybe many years ago it would be towards provision, or every child needs to go towards a specialist school, but not really now. I think with early years and their involvement, we're getting a good thorough, you know, insight into how the child is. So it's not really about the school or the placement, it's about the child. So where would the child thrive and be happy and be able to stay in school and adapt? So from my point of view, I hope that answers your question okay. Yeah.
And is there anybody else who'd like to ask a question? May I ask a question then? Which is, I wonder whether you see yourselves as a sort of a key working sort of professional, because we hear a lot about key working and the importance of having somebody who coordinates. And bearing in mind you're involved from 0 to 5, I just wondered whether you see that as being kind of central to your role. And you talked about, you know, accessing different services. I just wondered whether you see that coordination element as being part of your brief.
Yes, I do really, because I feel like we've got a good relationship with parents. We go in antenatally, so we build a relationship with parents from day one before their baby's born. So we're there up until they're 5. So some of these agencies come in and stay for a small period of time and then withdraw again, whereas we're the main person that's there for parents. And parents tend to trust us and build a relationship with us because we would do monthly visits, we would ring them, we're there on the end of the phone. So I would definitely see us as key workers for families. Yeah.
Yeah. Pat, again, you've posted something. Early help is imperative. Would you want to say something rather than just post it?
Well, it was Westcliff Executive Head, and I can't wait to see what that other name you use is. But I know it's you log in. It's the idea about early help, and we know it's diminished, and we know that if we prevent with anything, you know, whatever we're presented with in life, prevention's better than cure, isn't it? Really, it's going to be getting that right early identification, so that, you know, if we say Pat's got communication and interaction needs, we can help Pat to develop those parts of her experience. And I wondered if Westcliff Executive Head wanted to come in, so I can find out your real name as well.
Hello. Nicola Bond is my name. Nice to meet you all.
Nicola.
Yeah, it's just, I think for us, it's like you say, it's been cut so much, and early intervention is the key. And the earlier we put that intervention in for our children, the better it is for their life chances. And it's not all about just putting a child into specialists, is it? It's making sure that we've got what we need within our schools to provide that. And we need to adapt our environments to suit the child, not the other way around. And I think that that's the key thing for the, you know, getting the early help in and all the interventions that go in early on.
Thank you. Yeah, and we're going to be hearing from you soon, Nicola. So thank you. Nice to see your face as well. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Camilla. And we will share your slides. So thanks again. Okay. So now we're going to hear from Natalie Scholl, who is the head teacher at Low Hill Nursery School in Wolverhampton. And Natalie is going to be talking about supporting children to be included and to achieve an ordinary life in the nursery years. So thank you. Okay. You're on mute at the moment, Natalie. That's it. Fab. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, it wouldn't let us unmute. It was just, I don't know, it just wouldn't let us unmute. I'm just going to share my screen, so just bear with us one moment.
Thanks. Yeah.
Go into that. Let me see if I click onto that.
It's coming. It's coming.
Is it coming on?
Yes, yes, I can see it. So just.
Oh, I think we're just catching up. Sorry, one moment.
Yeah, all right, it may be your internet. I'm going to turn my camera off because I think it's affecting the my reception, at least, if nobody else is. So
okay.
For that.
So you can see our screen, so technology's on our side, that's brilliant. So I'm just going to introduce myself because I've got a colleague here with me as well, and we're going to be doing it together today. So I'm Natalie Scholl, head teacher at Low Hill Nursery School. Been a qualified teacher since 2006. I've taught in several different primary schools, always nursery and reception age group. I've got a passion for early years education and early years and children having the best start really in their life, which I think has been reflected in what everybody's been saying. I've got Emma here with me. So Emma.
Oh yeah, I'm Emma Harris. I was previously Emma Johnson, and I'm Senko at Low Hill Nursery School, and I've worked here for 7 years, and 5 of those years have been
Natalie, you've gone back onto mute.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear us now?
Yes.
I don't know why it has done it because we were on the PowerPoint screen. Hang on, let me flip back to that. I thought it was going too well. Can you hear me now still?
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. We'll carry on. So a little bit about our school. We're an outstanding nursery school with over 200 children and families. We have children who are 2, 3, 4 and 5 because within our we've got a special educational needs inclusive provision. So some of those children are reception age children. We offer 30 hours provision, so we really do have lots of different provision options. Our school is within a really high area of deprivation, and a factor that impacts a lot of our children is high levels of domestic violence, mental health issues and substance misuse, amongst lots of other safeguarding issues really. So that's a little bit about us. As a school, we really offer so much more than just a school. So always a warm welcome, which I think people always comment upon about how welcome. And for us, that's something that's really important, that everybody does feel welcome within our school. Judgment free. So, whatever's happened in your past is your past. It may impact on your life now, but, we won't judge any of our families. We've got staff who are passionate and care about not just the child but the family as a whole, which is a huge thing. I think what we've been talking about, the early interventions, a pastoral roles which has expanded through and during the COVID-19 pandemic, strong links with external agencies. I know we've been hearing about early help, which I think is something really important. Adult learning opportunities, support for students from a range of providers, including students with additional needs, which I know, Emma, when we were watching the video about the work fit, we offer placements, don't we?
We do, with students who have an EHCP themselves, who have previously attended specialist settings where some of our younger children do move on from here to then attend. So it's like that cycle that goes round really of inclusion.
Yeah. And I think we can show parents then about the aspirations and say, oh, well, your child may be moving to this setting, however, look at what these children have achieved. And I think it's again planting those seeds with parents and talking about, your child may be 4 or 5 now, but look what they could be achieving in this amount of time. So we'll just move on. We offer play therapy and strategies are used. If children are non-verbal, our play therapists are really highly trained in being able to unlock therapy for any of our children, so those who may be experiencing additional needs, but we work really hard on that, don't we, Emma?
Yeah, so it's just about reflecting back really. It's not necessarily what children can or can't do in terms of their communication. It's just about being with the child and having that empathy and sharing that experience.
So I know we're short for time, but we just wanted to kind of showcase and get across everything that we do to support families. So we have Tap Pack, which is an amazing programme about sensory regulation. We offer nurture groups, Relax Kids. We have attachment and trauma informed approaches. Charge up sessions for parents, which is working on their own wellbeing and mental health. Wellbeing walks, food bank, and we have a charity, Every Family Counts. So I'm just rattling through what we do offer because there's so much. But for us, we have been on a journey about the inclusive practice approach and what we believe. And me and Emma have been reflecting about that all staff have opportunities for training to support children with additional needs, and we feel that that's crucial, that it's supporting children and families who do have additional need. It shouldn't be seen as one person's responsibility. We see it as at Low Hill Nursery School that all staff have a role to play in all of the children's developments. I think as well, believing about everybody's got something to offer regardless of the starting points. High expectations for all. So, and if a child is given a label such as autism, we don't make assumptions about what that child may need. because when we were talking about some of our children who do have autism, each and every one of them are unique, and we celebrate and value that. Again, we don't see barriers but only look for solutions. I think for us it's about those opportunities to succeed and experience success, which we will talk a little bit more about with some examples. I think we were just reflecting as well about the importance of regulation and timing. That's a huge thing, because I know lots of settings do use time out, but for us, we've again been on that journey with our staff about children needing that timing and that time to respond.
The emotional literacy, isn't it? So
Yeah,
these are
of
skills
course.
for life, and preparing children for adulthood is about preparing them to understand their
Yeah.
feelings and emotions, and it starts with the real little ones, and our role is to be alongside and show empathy and label emotions, and help support them through difficult feelings and emotions.
Definitely, and we feel that children should have the same opportunities to experience success and lead an ordinary life with friends. We'll move on swiftly. So for us, there's a few photographs here about our environment, and for us, we always think about, so what do our children need? So what skills do the children already have? And what do the children already know? And I think that for us is something that's really, really important. The child might be a non-verbal child, but just because they're not communicating through their voice, it doesn't mean that they don't have the knowledge within them. For us, it's about those open-ended environments that promote the independence. Would you say, Emma?
And they're just having that enabling environment, so that the environment is suitable for all children. So it's here at Low Hill, we've got a communication friendly environment. So all those supports and strategies that we may use with a child who, for instance, has a diagnosis of autism, benefit all of our children. And we find that the children are really accepting of each other. And through modelling staff ourselves as well, we are the first person who show to children that people do need support and help with things, and that some have got strengths in one area and others need help in others. And we pride ourselves in observing the children helping each other and supporting one another through even using like objects of reference with each other to help children understand if they're struggling. And children, being aware of that and just being that team approach, which again is going to go out there into the wider community, and as they grow into adulthood life, those early experiences of acceptance is going to carry on through their life with them.
Definitely, and I think for us it reflects in those skills for life. Sometimes we have people who visit us and they can't believe that the tools that the children are able to access here. So we use real tools, the scissors are out, hammers, and everything is there. So it's about those risk taking, but also again going back to that independence and supporting children with choices. Let's move on. Just a few more photographs of some of our environments, and there's a little girl there using real tools, and I think it's just about children having the space to engage, work alongside each other. I think for us, sensory experiences have been really important, and building it into what do our children need, what do the children get out of what we're providing for them, and also the why are we providing the opportunities for the children. But I think when we reflect and when we look at the pictures that we've chosen, we can see enjoyment on the children's face, we can see engagement, we can see support for one another, and I think for us, it's just really key, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think pictures really do tell 1,000 words. Let's move on. So this is something that me and Emma have begun to think about, the journey, and the journey analogy. So all of our children are on a journey, but the vehicle they may use will be different, or it could be different. But for us, the destination is the same, but the experience on the way may be very different, and the things that they may see or experience may be different. And I think for us, it's about acknowledging that some children may need lots of breaks and stops along the way, but that's okay, and we just embrace and support that journey.
So it's like, you know, some children may present with some barriers that we just need to find a way around that, so that it's like kind of providing the resources and the strategies to support them, and not assuming that they can't do something because of a barrier. Language and communication is a good example of that. So children can have very many skills, but their barrier is that they're not able to demonstrate that through expressive language, and it is just about tailoring it really so that they can flourish
definitely
with the support, with the right support, and alongside their friends as well.
And that's what we're going to go on to now. These pictures were amazing for us, and some of these photographs, these of our what we would call our mainstream children, and obviously our children who do have high complex needs. But when we look at the pictures, we would never know which child is which, and for us that is something that we pride ourselves on, that these children, they don't stick out. They're able to access, they're able to have friends, and they're able to access the nursery provision because the support around them is right. They're able to problem solve, they're able to engage and work with one another as a team. And I just think that these photographs are really powerful. There's a few more pictures of friendships that children have built up about how they support. And I think for us, we're a very much learning community, and we acknowledge as adults that we all have strengths and weaknesses, and we work as a team, and we want the children to acknowledge that sometimes there are going to be people that are better at things than you, but we can support one another. And I think this is, you know, something that we're really, really proud of.
Yeah. Can I just say, just a couple of minutes left, and I know that there's some questions coming through.
Okay, we'll flick through, but
thank you.
We've got our some tools, and I think I just wanted to say about the parachute game here. This was about acceptance. So the children were doing a parachute, but some of our children who have got complex needs wanted to stand in the middle of it, but that wasn't an issue for the children on the outside. They understood you know, that's what those children needed to do. So we'll just quickly move very quickly through this. So we believe in children's interests and engagement levels following their own interests. Do you want to say a little brief about the communication, Emma?
Yeah, so obviously, like, we want to promote children's independence so that they can lead their own learning and make their own choices, and we support that here for all our children, whether they've got complex needs or whether they're able to speak fluently. So obviously it's about the strategies which will support children with additional needs, but they'll also support all of our children, whether they've got English as an additional language or just feeling a little bit kind of upset emotionally that day and not able to process listening and understanding the words. And I think it goes into the wider community of supporting parents to be independent and also have their own aspirations, which filter on to the children as well.
Yeah, I'll move on to we're very nearly at the end now. So for us, we spoke about Low Hill Nursery School being in an area of deprivation, but we have, and we could talk all day about this, about really high aspirations for our families and children. And we believe that if we have those high aspirations for our families, it will be cascaded onto the children. So parents are a child's first educator and role model. The window to the world. We have a holistic support for the whole family, and we do have a really collaborative approach, taking into consideration parents' wishes and feelings, and the child's voice being important. What does that child want? What does that child need? How can we support the family? And sorry, I feel like I'm rushing, but we just wanted to say this quote. Don't tell me the sky is the limit when there are footprints on the moon. And for us, you know, people used to say the sky's the limit, but we feel that we want for our children and families to know that they can go, you know, as far as they want to. But yeah, questions. So sorry, I felt that was a bit rambled through at the end.
Yeah. No,
I'll
thank
stop
you.
the screen, and yeah, well, if there's any questions, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think I've got the awful job of being the timekeeper, so apologies.
Oh no, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, and I think Pat's got a question.
I'm sorry, everyone. I don't mean to hog. I just learned through interaction. So maybe I can have a word with Elle later or any other psychologists on the group. Natalie and Emma, I mean, I just loved what you said, and I want to come to your nursery now. In fact, I want to come and play with some of the kids. But how can we seriously distill your inclusive approach across the system? And I suppose secondly, what are the pathways forward? Like, you know, you've given that brilliant start. Are your children able to continue to be included as their educational career progresses in Wolverhampton?
So I think for us, we have worked really hard. You know, this approach doesn't happen overnight, and it is embedded across all areas of our school. And I think sometimes people, they're interested in our approach and they want things to work within their settings, within their schools, but they want a magic wand. And I think sometimes it has to come from the heart. You have to truly believe it.
And we do work with families and with schools when children move from our setting to the next setting. So a really robust transition goes into place. So we share kind of what we've been doing for the children, and we support the schools to also put those resources and strategies into place as well. And we've been working with them, the EPs, and SNEES did a meeting yesterday, which was amazing for a child that's got complex needs that's moving to mainstream. And that is a map process, which people may be aware of, which is a visual kind of map of what that child needs with his dreams and aspirations. It was amazing. I think it's quite new, and I think, you know, hopefully this will continue more. And there is lots of collaborative groups working within the authority at the moment as well to share that knowledge with other settings and primary schools, etc.
And I think it's just using the key workers' knowledge of the children and sharing it and saying, look, you know, we always welcome as well, don't we, that if a school is struggling, please contact us, and, you know, we may have experienced this with this child. Our doors are always open. So
beyond autumn term, when the children have moved to us, we're still here if the schools are experiencing difficulties in integrating children or, you know, providing an inclusive approach. We are here to kind of share what we've learned about that child on their journey already. That doesn't just end when they leave us. We are here for support.
Thank you. I'm just reading some of the comments, so thank you. And it's really amazing to hear, because sometimes me and Emma feel that we're not achieving much because we're so busy doing paperwork and stuck in the day-to-day of it. But it's, you know, it's been an honour, and, you know, we're really grateful to be asked to speak today and to actually showcase what we do at Low Hill Nursery School. And COVID permitting, you'd be very welcome, Pat.
And if anybody wants to reach out by email or ask anything afterwards, because I know time's pressured today, we're here to answer any questions that way also. So
thank you.
Thank you very much, and I will be back in touch with you. I can rest assured. Thank you.
Looking forward to that.
Thank you, Carol.
Sets up brilliantly, I think, for our next speaker as well. So thank you both. It was great. Nicola, I know you were on the call. I'm hoping you're still with us.
I am. I'm still here. Sorry.
Yes, see you there. Yes. You're elusive because you come up as WH, but you're not. It's not your initials.
No, it's Westcliff Head.
But, Nicola is the executive head of Westcliff Federation, and she's based in Shropshire, and she's going to be talking about their approach to preparing children for life during the primary years. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Nicola, and thank you. We're looking forward to it. Great.
Thank you. Is it Rebecca? Have you got my PowerPoint? I sent it through.
Do you want to share it for me?
Yes, please. Thank you. Emma and Natalie, you are going to laugh because I've got exactly the same quote at the end of mine. So we're definitely on the same page, I think, on that one.
It's a brilliant quote, so that's really good to hear.
Yeah, sums everything up, doesn't it? Right, thank you. It's obviously just saying who I am, so we could have the next slide, please. I wanted to start with a question before I obviously go into what I do and what my Federation of Schools does, and that is, what do we want for every child? So I actually went around my staff and asked them the question, and this is what they came up with: happiness, safety, opportunity, someone to trust, and for belief in themselves and in others. because I think we find a lot of the time that people don't always believe in our children. And I'll just give a quick example. I sat in on an inclusion meeting for a child who wasn't one of my children, but now is. And it was basically, there was no belief in this child. So he had one term to go before he moves on to secondary. So I did ask, could we have him for that term? So we've had him for the term, and he is a different child because we believe in him and he now believes in himself. And it's just, he said to me one day, oh, I used to be invited into my classroom. And I think, well, where's the inclusion there? So to hear, he's inspired me the last term more than anybody else that we've had with us for a while. So I asked him the same question as well, and that's what he came up with, believing in myself. So it was so lovely to do that. So I thought I'd just start with a question. So if I could have the next slide, please. Just a little bit about me. I am the executive head teacher of a 4-school rural federation. I have been head teacher for 13 years. I have taught for 25 years. I've taught in Wales and in England, so I've got a good balance of the very different curriculums that they have in each country. I've been really lucky to work alongside the DFE and the local Shropshire Local Authority to open 2 resource provisions on at 2 of my schools, providing support for children with diagnosis of ASD and or moderate learning difficulties. Each child has an EHCP. They are set by a specialist placement panel, and then obviously we have them with us. One school has reception to year 2 and the other school has year 3 to year 6, but we are just looking to extend our reception to year 2 because we've had an influx. So we're supposed to have 4 commission places. We're now up to 9 commission places. So I need more space. So even though early help is lacking in some areas, those schools and nurseries who do it really, really well, and health visitors, again, I've been working with some wonderful health visitors, it makes a difference for those children to ensure they're getting the right provision for them. I have 340 children over the 4 schools, which may not seem a lot, for obviously we're very rural. My largest school is 150, my smallest school is 40, but having a small school of that size brings its own issues. There are 82 staff, 16 dedicated governors who are just amazing, and the most phenomenal communities we could wish for our children to thrive in. Across the 4 schools, we have a total of 25% children requiring SEN or inclusion support and in receipt of an EHCP. So they're not all in receipt of an EHCP, but that's quite a large percentage for rural. Shropshire is the 2nd worst funded county in England. So obviously we don't get as much money in our budget, so we have to be very, very creative. Next slide, please. So it's all about how do we prepare our children. Our federation ethos and vision ensures that all children have every opportunity offered to them, and children will have those opportunities in different ways because, as I said earlier, we need to adapt our environments and our opportunities to suit the child, not the child be adapted to suit us. One of our schools is renowned within the local authority for basically arms open, in you come, let's see what we can do. And we've been doing that now for 7 years, and they just excel when they come in here. They have that bespoke education package, and their needs are met every step of the way. There aren't any children then have actually gone on to specialist. They may go to mainstream with an element of specialist, but it's like you were saying before, Camilla, it's not always about being in a specialist school. It's about adapting and giving them what they need, but having those opportunities. So we have a culture of success no matter how small, and I would say every single one of my children is successful in their own way. I would say, look, obviously having heard Natalie and Emma, I do feel in primary, once they leave early years, that risk element is taken away from them because the curriculum is so narrow and we do not have those opportunities to, to get all of those tools out and to do what you do with them. It's phenomenal and it's sad. And I think that's where the curriculum for Key Stages 1 and 2 needs to change, because there is no element of risk for them anymore, and they become these children, and you'd look at them and think, well, you did this in nursery and reception, why can't you do that now? It's because the curriculum is too narrow and doesn't allow for that. Next slide, please. So continuing how we prepare them. Staff know the children very, very well, and this obviously helps to plan and implement a school-based curriculum that is fit for purpose. So yes, it ticks the national curriculum box, but it also ticks every individual child's box, because there are certain parts of the curriculum that certain children do not enjoy. So they will have an element of that, but we will find something else that they enjoy that they can then excel at. Staff do go the extra mile. I've got phenomenal staff who, you know, they want every child to succeed, and it doesn't matter what their starting point is. So I'm afraid I'm not a data-driven head teacher at all. My children are not numbers, they're not statistics, they're children. And they will make progress from wherever their starting point is. It's not about the attainment, it's about the progress they make. We have a dedicated support team who are not only there for the children, but also the family. A little bit like Natalie and Emma. Once the families are on board, it's so much better. I'm a facilitator for Understanding Your Child. I've got other facilitators as well. We started doing them online through lockdown, and that worked really well. We do individual support through Understanding Your Child as well, and that works really well for the parents, knowing that they can have somebody to turn to, even if it's just an email or a quick chat. So that makes a difference for our parents. Forward planning is the key for us, I think, within our primary settings. So regardless of the year group the child is in, you have those conversations. So they might be in reception, you know they've got some needs, but what will year 7 look like for them? I know it's a long way away, but if we don't start thinking about it, they're in year 6 before you know it. And that's probably something that every parent says when their child hits year 6. How did this happen? When did that happen? So we're always thinking ahead. You know, where do we want our children to be? What do we want them to have? We provide happiness coaching, and this has just been amazing in each of the schools. And we have somebody that comes in and she does once a week, and the children are so positive after the sessions. And we've had emails from parents saying, oh, they've come home and now we've got this going at home, you know, the worry jars and what the happy jars and what we can do. And it's so nice to see them so happy. And it's a bit like the buzz just goes when we have the happiness coaching. It's really nice. Growth mindset's been a big thing for us. It's embedded throughout the 4 schools. We did a lot of work. I think we've watched every Carol Dweck video clip there possibly is on growth mindset. We've done a lot of training on that, and it is embedded in every single school, in every child. We've also looked at different elements that feed into that. And at the end of the day, if you haven't got that, as Maslow's hierarchy of needs shows, if you haven't got those basics in place, the academic's never going to come. So you're fighting a losing battle anyway. So what is the point? So we want happy children, successful children, and that way everything comes into place for them, but at their rate. And that's the most important thing, I think. Next slide, please. Resilience. I'm not sure if anybody else has seen it within your professions at the moment, but since COVID, resilience has been hit really hard, and that's been a big, big area for us since we've come back. And I think since the January lockdown, it's been even harder for them. If they're not resilient, then they will find it very difficult to achieve in whatever area. So we've worked hard on instilling resilience. It's one of our values and runs within our ethoses across the 4 schools. We've set up resilience groups, and it's a bit like a social skills group, but we call it a resilience group. And an interventionist put in, somebody works with the children, and they're given tasks that they're not easy, but they're not allowed to give up. But as a team, they then have to work at coming up with a solution. The member of staff working with them doesn't want to know what the problem is. She wants to know what the solution is, or he wants to know what the solution is. And it's just been amazing. And they have taken ownership of it, and also the fact they've made mistakes, but it doesn't matter. Don't give up. Let's keep going together. And as a team, they've managed to solve things. And that's working really, really well at the minute. And that's something we're going to continue within our curriculum now. Like I said before, COVID, the impact has been huge. And I think if children think they can't do something, they will give up. And then you've then got that ever-evolving mental health issue as well, that I feel like this now. And as they get older, it's going to get really, really, it's not going to be good for them. Next slide, please.
Hi, Nicola. Just say you've got 5 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll talk quicker.
Thank you.
Inclusion, it's a biggie for us, inclusion. So our federation schools are very nurturing, and the social and emotional well-being of every child comes first. We've adapted our curriculums across the 4 schools and it's evolved from wellbeing being at the centre. So it's not just something that's added on in a PSHE lesson. Wellbeing is at the centre of everything that we do. Very inclusive and working closely with our inclusion team at Shropshire. We have children placed with us who have been permanently excluded from other settings, and they do require a bit more of a bespoke package, but they can be successful. And that's what we've done. That support goes in, we work with them and the families. And I think sometimes a new start can be what they need. You know, people don't know what they were like before. There are obviously reasons why children are permanently excluded, and it's digging deeper and giving them the confidence to be the person that they are. We want to make an impact on their lives, and that's at the forefront of everything that we do, because if we're not going to have an impact, then we're in the wrong job, really. We are very aware of what children can't do, but we look at what they can do and drive forward for a positive learning experience. Children don't need to be told what they can't do. We just need to work on the positives. And I'm so lucky that I can walk into any one of my schools and I'm blown away by the success of each and every one of my children. I've watched my little chappie this afternoon, the one who we've only had for a term. He is in a bubble with some reception year ones and he's teaching them. You know, they're doing the story of Moses and he's there and he's doing it. And he would never have done that before because he didn't believe in himself. So that's why, you know, I'm so blown away by all our children. So next slide, please. And there you go. There it is. Don't tell me the sky's the limit when there are footprints on the moon. And growth comes from setting your goals high and reaching for those stars. So again, it's down to that aspirations. What do we want for our children? We want the very best. And why is it that every child shouldn't achieve? And again, it always comes down to, for me, we need to adapt for those children, not the other way around. So there we go. Thank you.
Fabulous. How complimentary are those 2 presentations? They're wonderful. Thank you. Just brilliant. Even down to the last slide being the same.
I know.
Fantastic. And I know you probably noticed there, Nicola, that you were getting comments from Natalie all the way through, just saying how many similarities there were and about well-being at the centre. So great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Nicola?
Hi, can I just say it's amazing and really inspirational to hear that there are other people like us out there. For so many times we bang our head against the wall and say, look beyond the child. You know, behaviour is a communication. What is a child trying to communicate? So it's, you know, it's amazing to hear, you know, your approach. And we just kept saying, snap, yeah, like us, well done, yeah, right. You know, it's amazing to hear, isn't it? So
Yeah. And to see that it's like extended beyond early years into primary school as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, we need to be brave. We need more brave head teachers who are quite happy to take Ofsted on and, you know, fair enough, that's my academic, but these are my children. You know, and I'll always give Ofsted 2 sets of data. There's your academic, there's the progress. And that's what's more important to me.
Creative approach and risk taking that unfortunately breaks our heart to know that when our children leave us to go on to primary school settings, that all of those kind of skills, which are life skills that employers are looking for, you know, having autonomy, finding new ways to do things, not thinking there's just one right answer, etc. It kind of gets, like you said, like it gets kind of squashed out a little bit. They have to fit this, conform to this curriculum.
We've changed our curriculum, so we do more continuous provision right through to year 2 now.
Excellent.
Which is a lot like the Welsh foundation phase, because they cannot go from being in reception to suddenly sitting down and looking at a board. It's just not how it should be.
Little round of applause from us.
There is a question for you, Nicola. There's a question which is about how difficult is it to embed your approach across 4 schools?
It's quite easy actually, because I was head at my first school for 13 years, and then we were asked to sort of school improvement with one of the other schools, and we federated. So we have the same policies. Everything is exactly the same. So all our ethos, all our values, we're church schools. Our governors are all the same across the 4 schools because we're a federation. My senior leadership team all meet together on a weekly basis. All the teachers work closely together. We're a big team. It's quite hard to coordinate 82 of us in one team, but it is so good to do, and you can just see it. And as you said, I think, Natalie, you walk into the schools and you feel it, and that's the most important thing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So, Sarah, if these aspirations and the ethos starts at early years, then this sets the precedent.
Yeah.
Mm.
That embedment, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that cultural change as well. I think that's crucial.
Am I right in thinking we're due for a break now?
We are, yeah.
Fabulous. Okay, so this is going to be a quick comfort break, guys. You're not going to get long, but it's just enough time for you to go to the loo, grab yourself a drink, and if you could come back in 5 minutes, that'd be great at 3:15.
Okay, Carol, just to say sorry, I've got to go to an inclusion meeting of all things. So, but thank you ever so much, and I'll put my.
Nicola, it's just fantastic to hear. So thank you so much for coming and joining us, and good luck with your meeting. And I'll be back in touch with you as well. Okay.
Okay, I'll just put my email address in the chat. If anybody wants to contact me, then feel free.
Oh, that's really kind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody. See you shortly. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Yes.
Good.
Yes, I think so. So good. The day didn't start off well. I seem to be making endless mistakes, but yeah, just forgetting to send things and attachments, and I think I forgot to send something to you. And yeah.
Oh, it was only a copy. Yeah, copy something. It happens. Someday it usually is a sign that you need to take a break.
Yes, yes. I'd really love to have a holiday, but that's not happening at the moment. So, and there isn't one on the horizon either. So, but that's just because of our elderly dogs. We can't leave them with anybody. So, yeah. But
yeah.
But the time will come. The time will come.
It will. We had a holiday booked for Crete last year, which obviously was cancelled, and we thought we had it made by transferring it to this year. Didn't think for a second this year would have to be cancelled as well. Who did? And then this year, obviously, that becomes almost impossible. So yeah, but I have leave booked from Friday. Get the inspection over and done with, and Friday. Gonna go do a bit of camping in Cornwall just to get away from the house.
Yes, change of scene is so
Yeah.
important.
I mean, I've loved being at home, but I am ready for a change of scenery.
Yeah. I
So,
see you've got the Preparing for Adulthood graphic behind you. How cool is that?
Yes.
I thought that was
just-
brilliant too.
Yeah, it's just it was a way of well, I suppose it's a way of just trying to get everyone to think about PFA in some way or another. For every meeting I'm in, they can't help but see it behind me. So it's I'm brainwashing them, Carol. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, you do that. Yeah, well, that's good. We like it. So you're doing this as a double act with Claire?
Yes, Claire's going to join us. She's done the work on the actual EHC plan. Here she is. She's done the work on the actual EHC plan and annual review paperwork. So she's going to talk through that, and I'll just go through. I'll start us off and just set up what we were trying to do and what we actually can do, which has been a learning journey, I think.
Yeah, of course.
But that's fine. Yeah.
Super.
You've had a good turn. You got 30. How many have you got in the session? 39, something like that.
40 something at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we always have more sign up than turn up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because things happen, don't they? And
course, yeah.
I've had a couple of apologies this morning, and so yeah. So
yeah.
And a few people come a bit later, and yeah, perhaps they can only stay for a certain amount of time as well. So
yeah, that's fine. I think Claire and I are just happy to do something that's not inspection related.
Yeah.
It's just nice to put your brain to something else.
Today, are you of your inspection?
Last day today, yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah. Then they do the feedback tomorrow, and it will be what it will be.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we probably ought to start because just because of the schedule we've got, and you know, you can see it's a pretty full afternoon. So welcome back, everybody. I hope everybody's managed to grab a drink and do what you need to do. I'm now delighted to introduce to you Lindsay Sloan and Claire O'Brien, who are from, I think, probably our newest authority in England, which is Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. I happened to know that you were doing some exciting stuff around your education, health and care plan and trying to embed the Preparing for Adulthood outcomes in there, just because we'd had a conversation, and I thought of you when we were trying to find an example. So although you're not part of the West Midlands, you're very, very welcome. And I'm sure people will be really interested to hear what you've been up to. So over to you two.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm Lindsay Sloan. I'm the SEND Preparing for Adulthood pathway coordinator in BCP. So I'm part of the SEND improvement team, and Claire is also in that team, project and improvement team. Sorry, Claire.
I'm doing the quality assurance side of anything to do with education, health and care plans. I was a caseworker, but now I'm doing the quality assurance side of things.
So my role was developed in 2018 because BCP, or Poole at the time, were concerned that we didn't have a Preparing for Adulthood pathway that was embedded, and that there weren't enough, or there wasn't the links with adult social care that they really wanted in respect of preparing young people to move through and into adult life. In addition to that, our post-16 provision, we had some lovely, you know, very successful post-16 provision, but we had gaps in the cohorts that we could meet the needs of. So SEND invested in a role for PFA specifically, and my job is, as it sounds, it's to embed a pathway for preparing for adulthood across education, health and care, communities, volunteering, employability. So what we were trying to do, or what we continue to work on at the moment, is embedding PFA into the EHC plans. And the vision for that was purely, at the starting point, was our statutory duties as set out in the Code of Practice. So, you know, preparing for adulthood from the earliest years, having high aspirations across the 4 Preparing for Adulthood threads, embedding those high aspirations of the young people and families into each of the plans, and then making joint arrangements with education, health and with adult services as they progress, if eligible, into those aspects throughout their journey through life. So the initial process was Claire has done a great deal of collaboration and engagement with parents and carers on the EHC plan, so she'll be able to talk to you a little bit about that. But the overarching aim was to win the hearts and minds of families in respect of thinking about PFA, and that's quite hard to do because, as one of your colleagues was talking about earlier, you're preparing them for year 7, possibly when they're in reception, and it can seem such a long way away. If you add that to an adult life and what that adult life might look like, it can become incredibly challenging and frightening for families to think that far ahead, particularly if they think that future might look quite bleak for them. So winning their hearts and minds is very much about embedding the language of preparing for adulthood from the very earliest opportunity. It's not about sealing and signing off what's going to happen at that point. It's just having the conversations, always bringing it into the discussions, the reviews, the weekly catch-ups in teams, anything and every opportunity where PFA can be brought into that discussion, hence my background, so that no one ever forgets. That's what I'm trying to portray. So it was about getting that language out there amongst our colleagues and for our families, so that when we had the reviews, we could then start to have the conversations about what adulthood might look like for their young people, sensitively, of course, if there was an implication there that adulthood wasn't something that some of our young people with significant health needs may survive to experience. So you do have to bring that into your approach and recognise that. But one of the things that was really key to me was when we were talking about preparing for adulthood, the discussion or the thought process seemed to go completely towards whether they'd live a life independently in a home of their own or with their family, and whether they would be in employment or not. And it's so much broader than that. But we just weren't getting that message across. So I started talking about case officers or REHCP sort of holders, coordinators, about what communication needs might need to be developed in order to live an independent life. What communication and interaction skills may need to be worked on to be able to develop friendships and relationships, how communication will be key to community inclusion, or being able to take care of yourself on a day-to-day basis, or elements of your care and your life on a day-to-day basis, and just use communication and interaction as one element of what that might mean for preparing for adulthood. So if we're doing that, and we've done a few bits of training, Claire and I intend to do a lot more training around that with our case officers. So the idea was, let's embed it straight into the EHC plans, right the way throughout the EHC plans, at every point having some discussion and some aspirations listed under preparing for adulthood. We're not using slides until a bit later, Carol. That's right. So yeah, how would we embed it throughout? And Claire's slides will show you how we started that process. And that's when I came into Carol and I said, this is proving harder than I thought. We're struggling with this because our case officers, for instance, are not all education, don't all have education backgrounds. They're not all from an education background, never mind a teaching background. The information that we were getting from our colleagues in respect of contributing to the EHC plans weren't talking about preparing for adulthood. And there hadn't necessarily been enough enough people who had that conversation about preparing for adulthood or attended any kind of function or training about it for it to start coming into the case officers, which meant that you would get all this information for an EHC plan, but nobody really would have talked about preparing for adulthood, and therefore it might only be the EHCP writer who is then trying to embed that PFA into the EHC plan. So you'll see when Claire does her slides in a minute why that was proving quite difficult. In addition to that, we had the case officers telling us, this is really hard, Lindsay, you know, at what point are we talking about a need? Are we talking about an outcome? Are we talking about an aspiration? What are we talking about? And why have we got PFA into each of these different sections? So it's really been a journey to that point of saying, OK, we may not have that quite right yet. We may need to tweak where this preparing for adulthood needs to sit. But I'm going to hand over to Claire so that she can take you through what it actually looks like in an EHC plan when we started this work, and then what we're thinking about doing as our next steps, which I have some more information about. Claire, I'll hand over to you to share your screen, or
yes, I'll try and share my screen, definitely. Okay. Hopefully we can all see that. Let me just see if I can see.
I can see that.
Lovely, excellent. Okay, so as Lindsay said, we're looking at the co-production of BCP paperwork, but from a PFA point of view. Very hard, by the way, to follow the previous speakers prior to Lindsay and I, because that was all the inspirational on the ground stuff. But I have got a background in education, and I have been on the chalk face, so to speak. But now we're looking at it from a slightly different point of view, but still with that same aspiration of the holistic outcomes for young people. So what we've done, oh, let me just go on to there. So the background to the EHCP templates, as you know, we are a new local authority. We've merged Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, so 3 local authorities into one, causing 3+ lots of paperwork for just about every aspect of what we do, and so little continuity, and so we're having to draw things together and working quite hard to co-produce things. So for the EHCP, we actually went to Dorset, our neighbour, our geographical neighbour, had a look at what they were doing because they'd recently developed a template, asked permission to sort of use that as our basis, and then we ran with that. And we co-produced this with quite a few different people. So we had our parent carers together, which is our parent forum, SENDIAS, the SEND team, including the business support angle, the psychologist, educational psychologist, our clinical commissioning group, and we took that template with the aim to make it one comprehensive template, which was going to be compliant, captured everything, and was just going to be a really great form to use. We got quite near the end of the process and we all went, where's PFA? So, which weirdly, we didn't have it in the Dorset template, so it didn't really prompt us to think about that. But obviously, Lindsay was on the ball. So we then added it in. And so what we've did was, so this was the our sort of pro forma is what we're trying to do is get a more joined up approach when we're looking at an EHCP. So we've combined our section B with our section E and F so that you can see strengths, needs, outcomes and provision for each of the sections of cognition and learning, communication, interaction, social, emotional, mental health, and sensory and physical. And in that, and trying to embed that whole thinking about that future for that young person, we popped in the outcomes for PFA. To be considered from year 9 and above originally, and that's what the case officers felt. I think they thought, well, okay, we don't need to think about that until year 9. In the meantime, we rolled this one out. There was quite a need to get this out quite quickly. As I say, we were using lots of different templates, so we rolled this one out. And then next thing we did, we started to look at the annual review paperwork. And we wanted to tie in very closely with the EHCP so that it sort of just merged on through, and so that when you were amending a plan, the pro forma was similar, and so it would be quite easy to amend and see what needed doing. Once again, we had a great team of co-production groups, including Senkos at the time. So we involved Senkos. We did a shout out. We had a great uptake of Senkos wanting to be in, and managing quite a large group virtually was quite good, getting everyone's opinions. And we wanted to get one comprehensive annual review template, and that actually facilitated the next steps of that young person. But we also want to be aspirational, and we know our annual review turnover and getting that the decision back to parents isn't very timely at the moment. We aren't within our statutory timelines there of the 4 weeks. So this would help. I'm not saying it will cure it, but it would help with that sort of streamlining across the EHCP with the annual review paperwork. So we had a look at the paperwork, and we've streamlined it with the EHCP, and we've added things like additional settings, because we know that particularly in secondary we've got the young people that may be in joint placements. They might have a mainstream school named on their plan, but they might be in an alternative provision, and we need to make sure that there's a joined up approach to who's overseeing that provision. We added boxes to indicate whether it was a phase review right on the front cover. We wanted to look at which edition of the plan we're going to be looking at during that annual review, to make sure we were all on the same page, that we weren't all looking at different versions of the EHCP. So we were just trying to streamline things. We wanted attendance data, and also that exclusion data. We wanted to know what was going on, because we get a lot of feedback from parents to say, on a part-time timetable, and we want to just dig a little bit further into what that might mean for that young person. And then we added a whole section on PFA, which this is Lindsay's baby, really. She added all these little bits in. We worked with CCG as well to get these links to the health check on the local offer. They wanted us to add that in to flag that parents were entitled to get that health check for their young people. We've put some links to the PFA team on the local offer, and so we've actually put those links in that would hopefully lead settings and parents and carers and young people to the local offer for more information. And there's a sort of we presupposing that these things are going to take place. So we've got careers advice provided, not when was there or has there been. It is, we think, you know, they're entitled to career advice. When was it? Details of work experience placements, not has there been work experience. It's that sort of that presumption that that is taking place, and it's putting those settings in that forefront of having to write in what they've done for those young people. So we continue to try and embed PFA, and then it just wasn't sitting very well. So we've put it in into the annual review paperwork under the outcomes section. And what we've done, even yesterday, Lindsay and I were sort of trying to say, is this right? We've actually taken some of the headings. So for cognition and learning, we've put the new and out and ongoing outcomes for education, training and employment. But in the health section, we'd be putting ongoing and new outcomes for health and well-being. In sensory and physical, we would include the title ongoing and new outcomes for living as independently as possible. So we're trying to draw in those outcomes, but pop them in each section with a different with a slightly different heading, so that there's no repetition, because we were getting a little bit of repetition throughout the plans and things. So that's what we're hoping to do from an outcome point of view. But our annual review paperwork, we still wanted to look at other things. So we were looking at phase transfers, and we're just about to roll out the training on this new paperwork. And I'm going to really labour the young person's view as well as the parent carer view, particularly at phase transfer for the older students. We want to know what they're feeling. The annual review might not be quite the right forum. They might not feel they've got a voice in that forum, because it can be quite intimidating sometimes. So there will be other ways that they can voice those views. But we would hope that at this point we would capture something of what they're feeling about their next step in education. We've also put in travel assistance. So we often ask whether the local authority is providing transport. With £6 million going out of our budget each year on transport, is quite a good question to ask. And also just highlighting is, what's the next step for this young person if they are preparing for adulthood, or even preparing just for further independence? What could they now cope with? So they were in a taxi on their own. Could they now be in a shared taxi or a shared minibus? They were in a shared minibus. Can they now actually start using public transport? So not only are we thinking of cost saving, because we have to, but we were actually thinking of developing those independent skills for that young person, because it's the right time to do it. So going back now to the Education Healthcare Plan, we've just recently reviewed it. So it's been in circulation now for about 3 months. So the annual review paperwork we're going to roll out the training for, I think we're quite happy with that. So we then went back to the EHCP template and had another look at it because it wasn't quite working. It was a bit clunky. And so where we did have our PFA outcomes sitting underneath section B, we've actually now moved them so that we've got them down in section E in the outcome section. And we've mirrored our annual review paperwork by just taking a couple of the headings per section, so that the case officers and the review teams can have a look at those and actually really focus in on those. So we've made some amendments to our original EHCP template, and I'm sure we'll make more. It's an evolving system, it's an evolving piece of work, and I think we're trying to embed that whole plan, do, review into what we're doing as a QA team as well, so that if we're introducing change, we'll review it.
Warning.
Thank you. We'll review it and then hopefully get it right at some point. But it's always under review. But I think Lindsay has been the champion for getting this PFA right. What we'll try and do now is organise some training for the teams, for the case officers, so that they now can see how that fits. And thinking about all the other presenters, it's then thinking about those future goals and outcomes for young people, but starting at quite a young age. So we want to take away that year at 9 and above mentality and actually really bring it right down to right from the off, what are we aiming to do for this young person? That's the end of the presentation.
There's a few things we learnt along the way, and one of those was just getting PFA into the EHC plan wasn't going to be enough. So we've got a few documents that we've created in BCP to support families and the case officers to bring PFA into the discussions. So and most of those have been adapted from what are on the PFA website. So there's a PFA annual review toolkit, which is adapted from the PFA one that's on the website, but BCP'd. We've got an EHCP, considering PFA from the earliest years document. And I've created a SharePoint site that I put every piece of information I can find onto, so that all case officers can go into that if it's about health, if it's about transition, and be able to pull out those sort of good practice from elsewhere. So it's hitting it hopefully from all points. Did we make time? Did we make time?
Yeah, very good. Yes, thank you. Over to Carol. Carol, are you coming in?
I was just saying, I think I'm talking to myself because I was on mute, sorry. We did have some hands up, but I'm now not seeing them. I'm just wondering what's happened there. But
yeah, can I ask a question? Sorry, all the documentation that you've got, I think is absolutely great. Is that all on your local offer?
It is, yes.
Yeah, yes,
brilliant.
yeah. The annual review's just gone up there. The original EHCP template is on there. The new one that I was showing just at the end, where we're putting the outcomes, the PFA in the outcome section, we're just getting it formatted, so it should actually be on there quite soon.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
If there's anything you look for on there and you can't find it, just email me and I'll get it out to you. We'll share anything that's helpful.
Okay, no, that'd be really useful actually. Thank you.
Louise has got her hand up.
Hi, guys. That's really interesting to see how you've sort of woven in the PFA to the plan itself. I'm wondering, is there an even step beyond that to actually get rid of the needs completely, or is that a step too far? So then the plan would just look like the PFA out throughout in terms of strengths and needs under that. Is that an aspiration, or is that not?
Do you know, it's so difficult, Louise. We have tried a number of different approaches. I don't know if there's the perfect answer out there, to be honest. Every time we think we've got an idea and we've got a plan, it'll throw up 10 other questions that you don't quite think it hits the. So I think with everything, it'll be try it, review it, amend it, until we get to a point where families, young people and the providers are thinking it's as close as we're going to get. Of course, we'll get to that point and then they'll give us all a new EHCP template to use after all these years. But we're going to go with they probably won't.
Yeah, I mean, legally we have
to
put needs in, don't we? Unfortunately, and I think that's in a way a bit of a shame when it comes to PFA, but I think that's also in the skill of the plan writer, and I'm auditing plans all the time, and you can see how the language needs to change and morph as that young person gets older, and maybe we'll be having much more access to the plan and we'll be reading it and seeing what people are saying about them. And I think that's where we need to be very careful about what we put into the needs section that then reflects the outcomes. So yeah, it should be at the forefront of our minds so that person could pick up that document at any time and read what we've said about them.
And also go back historically as well, isn't it? You know, so even if they're 16 now, and if the plan started when they were 5, then they can have access to that. I'm also wondering about, you mentioned earlier about what professionals are writing to support that process as well. And I know as a service, I'm an educational psychologist in Birmingham, so our psych advices, our psychological reports, we write under PFA headings from year 9 onwards. So that's what the local authority get.
Louise, would you be able to share any of your experiences or because that would be really useful. Claire is really be more than really useful, but Claire is working on with our health and social care providers someone's strimming out outside. She's working on what the advice will look like and how we can I've asked if the providers of that advice will think about how PFA could be embedded into that. You know, from a health perspective, how do we prepare them to manage their health needs independently? How do we prepare them to do any and everything that they could possibly actually learn how to do themselves, but from that advice giver's perspective. And it will be really useful.
Yes, we've built it into health and social care, and to the stat requests for that. We've actually, Lindsay's helped devise those headings. What I'm doing next is meeting with the educational psychologists for our July audit, because we do an audit every month, to specifically look at their advice. At the moment, we're going to focus in on section F on provision, because we've got a bit of a problem, but we will probably also talk about templates and what it looks like. So if you've got anything that you want to contribute, that would be great, so that we could have a look at that.
I've got my email in the chat, then if you reach out, ongoing conversation, because it sounds like your kind of paperwork at the local authority level is sort of a bit ahead possibly of where we are in Birmingham, but possibly our advice might be in a different place to what your EPs do. So if there's any learning across services, they'll be more than happy to have a chat.
Just getting everyone to think along the same levels, isn't it?
It is, you know.
Sorry to cut across you, because it's obviously really important stuff, but I am also very conscious that we've got Sharon waiting to speak, and that we've got some breakout rooms to go into shortly as well. So thank you so much, Lindsay and Claire. That's really helpful. And I guess people who want to contact you, if you pop your email address in the chat, that would be lovely. And also just to say to you that Pat has suggested that you might write to Scott at the Department for Education as well about some of your ideas about the template. So that would be another good thing to do. Thanks. Okay, Sharon, welcome. Thank you so much for your patience, and welcome and you're going to be talking to us about what you're doing in relation to preparing for adulthood from year 6 and the transition to secondary school, aren't you?
Yes, yeah. So let me just try and screen share.
And Sharon is from Portsmouth area, so
hopefully you can see that. Unfortunately, yes, the chat is also appearing.
Thank you.
Okay, so obviously I'm a SEN team leader. I have a lead for post 16 at Portsmouth, and we the title is explicit that we're using the PFA from year 6. So let me just go on to the first slide. So in Portsmouth, we've always sort of reflected the PFA agenda in our plans from year 9 onwards. And in around 2018, we introduced a specific PFA template for our plans, which included obviously new annual review paperwork to match the new template. So we have taken out the cognition and learning as SEMH, all from, that doesn't appear in our templates. We were advised by one of the DFE SEND advisors that there is no requirement in the code to have those titles in a plan. So we have literally gone for the preparing for adulthood titles. In April 2019, we did decide to introduce the preparing for adulthood agenda from year 6 and create the template from year 6 instead of from just year 9. And sort of the reasoning behind our decision was obviously it's quite clear in the code of practice. Chapter 8 in itself is entitled Preparing for Adulthood from the Earliest Years. And it also goes on to state that high aspirations are crucial to success. Discussions about longer term goals should start early and ideally well before year 9, so at school. So that was our motivation for sort of thinking, well, actually, what about year 6? And also, as a parent and thinking from parents' perspective, sitting at the year 6 annual review saying, OK, what would you like your child to achieve by year 9? You can't really sort of imagine what they may be doing by the middle of secondary school. But I think it's easier for a parent to really sort of think, OK, by the time they leave secondary school, this is what I want them to be achieving. So they were our sort of main drivers for sort of doing it from year 6. So the process, we have always, as part of our year 5, our transfer process, always write to the year 5 parents in the June of July to just explain the process, and we do ask them to sort of submit a sort of an early indication of what placement they might like for secondary. Gives us planning. Obviously, we realise they can express a different preference at the annual review, or similarly a different preference when we issue the amendment. But we like an indication. But at part of that process, we have now been able to sort of explain to parents about the preparing for adulthood agenda at year 6, so they're prepared when they go to the year 6 annual review. In terms of working with our junior school and primary schools, we recognise that this was introducing new concepts. So it was introduced through our SENCO network meetings that we have. The SEN team attend meetings with the SENCOs in our area. And we also have SEN attendance at our year 6 annual reviews. So as a team, we're able to support the schools with sort of looking and thinking about the PFA agenda. We have a specific annual review form for schools to use at year 6. So we have a form pre-year 6 and we have a form for sort of year 7 onwards, but we have a specific form for year 6. Which considers obviously their current special educational needs, their progress and provision under the 4 main areas of need. But we also then focus on how can they be transferred into sort of the PFA headings. So the positives, we've had received good feedback from our parent groups for moving to this process. So obviously thinking about the PFAs for them has been positive for them. And we have had some resistance from a handful of our primary schools, mainly because we changed the paperwork. But they've got into the process and we've now completed 2 phase transfer years. And we're about to obviously start on our 3rd. And so it has kind of now embedded the process for our schools. And it's also helping our secondary schools to really focus on the preparing for adulthood agenda and having discussions that may not have happened until nearer the end of secondary school, for example, sort of travel training. Challenges. We've had some challenges from a small number of parents, in particular a solicitor who was representing a parent who stated that using the PFA from Year 6 was illegal. We were obviously able to sort of defend that argument by quoting what the Code of Practice was saying, and obviously a tribunal wasn't interested in that, and we obviously been working hard with our professionals, the EP team, health, social care professionals, to sort of ask for their advice to be under the PFA headings from Year 6 onwards, and our EPs are starting to do that now. Health and social care we're still sort of working with, so that's just sort of our challenge and where we are currently. Quite quick, quite short, but sort of any questions?
Thank you, Claire. Sorry, thank you, Sharon.
That's okay.
Oh dear. Yes, any questions? Lindsay, you've got a question.
Yes, definitely. We met a long time ago, Sharon. I don't know if you'll recall, but quite a few of our colleagues from when I used to work in Southampton have come to Portsmouth now. Right. So yeah, I remember us meeting then. Yeah, that's all really, really interesting that you've taken it as far back as Year 6. Love that idea. So I might catch up with you outside of this meeting and just see how that went, because the COVID year for the school shutdowns have really impacted on me being able to do a great deal to embed that into schools. So I might rethink at what point I'm asking them to embed it from. So I'll catch up with you if that's all right.
No, that's fine. Yeah, by all means.
Does anybody else have any questions? There's a comment from Pat about you starting so at Year 6, which is really wonderful to hear, and Elle also saying that as well. So yeah, really positive that you're starting with that process, and it does inevitably have a impact on the way people perceive their role, because you're starting to raise issues so much earlier. They're bound to be thinking, oh, well, perhaps we should be doing something about that. Yeah, so it's great actually.
Yeah,
so,
and just little things. Say, when we discuss about whether a child can make a snack, or at Year 6, that sort of thing probably wouldn't have come up in an annual review before that. So you find out a lot more about what they're able to do independently at home, and start parents thinking, well, actually maybe they could start to make some sandwiches or that sort of thing. So it does get those discussions earlier on, and that's quite positive, I think.
Very positive. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. In the interest of keeping us reasonably to time, I'm going to say thank you very much, Sharon, no and let's now move into our discussion groups. And Pat's just saying positive risk-taking conversation again. Yeah, thank you. So we have now got an opportunity to go into breakout rooms. Then the question is going to be posted up for us, isn't it? It's about how aspirations are being raised in your area and what more could be done. So that's the question for us, and we need to be back at 4:15 thereabouts. Okay, so and we'll have a little bit of feedback then. Okay, so I'll join you in the breakout room, my group, whoever you are. So look forward to seeing you there.
Pathway.
Going back.
Coming back.
Yeah, we're back in.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Did everybody?
Oh, nice to see you all again. Isn't it miraculous? It's just, 1 minute we're in one place and the next minute we're all together again. It's powerful. Okay. So, well, I hope you had a really interesting discussion. It felt quite short, but we had a really good chat actually. So, yeah. Elle, I'm going to hand over to you.
We'll take given the feedback then. So from each of the groups, we're going to listen to 2 key points from the facilitators that was discussed. And I don't know about you guys, but it's going to be really hard to narrow it down to 2 because it was such a rich discussion. From our group, I guess there were 2 main areas of conversation. One was about social care and the young people that are in specialist residential settings with very, very high level needs.
And the conversation there was about how do we challenge the settings more to consider preparation for adulthood. So, for example, these might be young people that don't even have to leave the setting to go and visit their doctor, go and visit a dentist, because they will come onto site and work with the young people there. So how can we use a stepped plan approach to even getting that young people to see the dentist in the car park or somewhere different, which we thought was a really interesting point. And it was about being too risk averse and overprotective at times and how we can overcome that. Another, I'll go for the second area that we talked about a lot, was about parents as well, and this idea of how do we reassure parents that their child will succeed in the next stage, whatever that might be. We hear so often that parents, oh, they won't cope when they move from nursery, they won't cope in secondary, they won't cope in college, and that's a real panic of parents. So how do we get them involved and included so that they feel completely reassured that the support's in place, this young person has strengths, and those strengths are the strengths that we're going to focus on building on. And that's what led to a really interesting discussion about how we as professionals, we listen to the strengths and skills and we draw them out, but is that really a golden thread that we use? Or does that get forgotten and we listen to it, but then we focus on what's not working well and how do we fix the things that are not working well? And perhaps there needs to be a thought shift more to how do we capture the things that are working well and do more of them, and build that strength and build that capacity from that area rather than trying to fix the things that are not going well. So I think they were probably the main points from our group. Pat, I'll hand over to you to suggest some of the 2 key points that you had from your discussion, if that's okay.
Thanks, Elle. I think the whole afternoon's been really uplifting, hasn't it? And that continued with our group, where there was definitely that feeling of recognising the point that we were at in individual local areas, and some of the things that we've heard earlier in the day that we take back and tweak and borrow. The 2 things that we wanted to take forward were that, aspirations can be really small, everyday things. So that's important to sort of plan with a person-centred approach in school, in early years, in settings and colleges, and make sure that we sort of build some of that confidence around independence, or that ability to make friends with community inclusion. And then the other bigger area really for the group was within EHC plans, that it was really heartening to hear Pam, as one of our Parent Carer Forum reps, to say that for parents and families, that we're not saying education's not important, but education is sometimes too much the focus of the plan, and that families really do want that concentration on developing those 4 pathways, because they give that fulfilling life, but they do genuinely prepare us to embrace the education. Pam's daughter, if we'd started a bit earlier, perhaps could have been able to access a local FE college more readily, we'll put it that way. So thanks. I think we're running out of time, but that's 2 points.
Thanks, Pat. Thank you. Carol, I'll hand over to you for feedback from your group.
Yeah, I'll try to be very quick. I think the 2 points that we focused on were the need for opportunities for skills development for adult life, and something the same as Pat was saying, really, that in itself engenders confidence. And the other one was around the work that's been happening in Wolverhampton around the person-centred approaches and solution-focused stuff that's going on in relation to the early years inclusion project, and the fact that there's a bespoke training programme for people around each child when they transfer into mainstream primary school, and that's in itself raises aspirations and leads to kind of concrete actions. And it struck me as being a really positive example of how you can make a difference by organising things a bit differently.
Definitely.
So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. Thank you. And then Sarah.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'll put my video on, but I might have to switch it off if my internet is playing up. So basically very similar, and I think it was about the need to embed experiences early on and exposure of what is out there, such as visiting employers, community. So this equals cultural change. One of the questions, I think that it's a bit of a field, what is out there, what does that support look like, who are the employers. Then the other point was really to give teachers the confidence, I think, to move away from the formal curriculum to focus on life skills, which obviously will link into academic success, but change, look at what skills the young person needs. I'm going to say young person, the child needs when they're out in the community. It's about handling money, it's about paying for something in the shop. So those were the two. We talked about lots of other things, but those were the two ones that the group felt that were the important ones at the moment.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. That's great. Sounds like there's been a really rich discussion there as well, so that's really good food for thought. Thanks everyone for contributing to that. Pat, I think it's just left for me to hand over to you to do the summing up and the evaluation, if that's okay.
It is, thank you, because Elle, Carol and Sarah have done all the hard work with Rebecca in preparing for today's activity. I mean, I think it's been really, really stimulating and I've really enjoyed it. Thank you. Obviously to you three who've organised it, with Camilla, Natalie, Emma, Nicola, Lindsay and Claire and Sharon. We had a wealth of inputs. It just indicates, doesn't it, that PFA is everybody's business, its whole system. And I mentioned values earlier. I think it's a set of values that we can coalesce around that can promote that inclusive opportunity across all of our different school settings and colleges and different opportunities in the workplace. There's always more to do. It's making me wonder what else we can do to support one another, really, whether Carol's obviously led the region for some time as the PFA regional advisor. A reminder that there is an opportunity for some bespoke support for PFA and other areas of work that goes through a sort of a brokerage, isn't it, Carol, that Carol or myself can request. And if you think that you would benefit from that, or if you think that that you would have access to it, if you've got a written statement of action, you certainly should have, then get in touch with Carol or with me, if that's okay. And Pat Tate, our regional advisor, can assist with it too. And then I think it's something about maybe auditing or mapping some of the things that we've got in the region that work really well. And Carol, because I'm joining you, from the East Mid, you may have already done some of that, so it may be a refresh. But it's the idea of sharing. I was struck by colleagues in Staffordshire really being keen on now having that confidence and some of the tools to take PFA forward within their system, but probably benefiting from knowing what the paperwork looks like in BCP and other areas, so that they've got something to build upon. So I think a bit of an audit. We think that the four of us would like to continue to connect together, because Sarah also leads the post-16 commissioning group and feeds into the fee uplift work as well. But certainly Elle, Carol and Sarah, I think it's been a really positive, worthwhile afternoon. And I think we probably need to do a bit more of from the earliest years again. Thanks, everyone. Carol, I don't know if you want to come in, and I know there's an evaluation form in the chat box that we need to complete, so I shouldn't forget that, Rebecca. Sorry.
No, thank you, Pat. No, that's a good reminder. Thank you. Only just to say that I did sort of say at the beginning that we are hoping to have another 2 events of this type, but the next one looking at the secondary school years and the kinds of things we can do to embed preparing for adulthood in the curriculum, and in terms of support for families and helping young people to have, develop their aspirations and so on. So we did talk about the possibility of having that at the end of October or the very beginning of November. We will be back in touch with you, obviously, to let you know when that's going to happen. And the 4 of us will, join together and ideally come up with hopefully an agenda that's of interest to you all. So thank you everybody for participating today, and I've really appreciated working with everybody, and there'll be some fantastic resources for you all from today's slides and so on. I think there's some really good connections being made, which is fantastic, so thanks a lot.